They blocked my driveway for 6 months straight, and in the end, I made sure they couldn't legally use the road in front of their own house. Yeah, it sounds insane when I say it out loud, but if you'd been there that night, standing where I was standing, you might have done the same thing. I live in a small, quiet neighborhood just outside of Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy. Mostly older ranch homes built in the late 60s, wide yards, cracked sidewalks, mailboxes that lean a little too far forward like they're tired of holding up the weight of everyone's bills. I grew up in that house. My grandfather bought it new in 1968. My mom still lives with me now. She's 74, arthritic knees, stubborn as a mule, still insists on carrying her own groceries even when I tell her to wait for me. I work maintenance for a regional hospital. Long shifts. A lot of nights. A lot of overtime. The kind of job where you don't really sit down unless something's broken or on fire. And about a year ago, a couple moved into the corner house across from mine. Big black moving trucks, expensive patio furniture, contractors coming and going for weeks. The guy's name was Brent Calloway. Late 30s maybe. Clean beard, crisp polos, that confident tech startup energy like he's always 5 minutes away from closing a deal. His wife, Elise, drove a brand new Porsche Cayenne. Their teenage son had a Mustang GT that he revved every morning at 6:45 like the entire block needed to hear it. Their house had a 2-car garage, a wide driveway, more than enough room. And yet, for reasons that still make my eye twitch, Brent decided my driveway was overflow parking. The first time it happened, I figured it was a mistake. I came home after a 12-hour shift, shoulders tight, feet aching, and there it was, a silver Audi A8 parked sideways across the mouth of my driveway. Not just close, not slightly over the line, completely blocking it. I parked on the street, walked across, knocked on his door. He answered with a Bluetooth headset still in his ear. "Oh hey man," he said, smiling like we were already friends. "What's up? Your car's blocking my driveway." He turned, glanced over his shoulder like this was the first he'd heard of it. "Oh shoot. Yeah, sorry about that. We've got some guests over. I'll move it." And he did. No argument. No attitude. I even thanked him. Should have known that was the calm before the storm. After that, it started happening once a week. Then twice. Then almost every other day. Sometimes it was his Audi. Sometimes a client's BMW. Sometimes a random SUV I didn't recognize. Always right there, nose kissing the curb, tail angled across my driveway like it belonged to him. At first I left polite notes. "Hey Brent, please don't block my driveway. My mom needs access." Then I tried texting. We'd exchanged numbers after a neighborhood barbecue. He responded with thumbs up emojis, and my bad. Won't happen again. It always happened again. The thing is, Brent ran a consulting firm out of his house. Some kind of business development strategy outfit. He called it Callaway Growth Labs. Fancy logo on a sign stuck into his front yard. Clients coming and going all day. Men in slim suits. Women with leather portfolios. Luxury cars lining the curb like our street was suddenly a corporate parking lot. Technically, our neighborhood was zoned residential only. But I guess if you keep it small enough, nobody notices. Or nobody cares. Except I did. Because when I'd get home at midnight after replacing busted HVAC units and unclogging hospital drains, the last thing I wanted was to circle my own block looking for parking while some startup guy used my driveway as a suggestion. The night everything changed, I had worked 16 hours. 2 emergency calls. 1 busted pipe. 1 generator failure. I was running on vending machine coffee and pure irritation. I turned onto my street and saw the headlights first. Bright white LEDs reflecting off my garage door. And there it was again. This time a matte black Mercedes S-Class, parked clean across my driveway like it was staged for a photo shoot. I didn't even sigh. I just stared at it through the windshield for a good 10 seconds, engine idling. I parked 3 houses down because that was the only open spot left. Grabbed my lunch bag, walked home. My mom was standing on the porch when I got there. "You had to park down there again?" she asked. "Yeah." She shook her head, not angry, just tired. "I had to carry the groceries from the corner this afternoon. That car was there then too. That's what did it. Not the inconvenience. Not the disrespect. The image of her, small frame, 2 grocery bags cutting into her hands, walking past Brent's perfectly manicured lawn while his clients laughed inside over catered sandwiches. I walked straight across the street and knocked. Brent opened the door mid-call again. "Hey buddy, give me 1 SEC. he said into his headset, then muted himself. What's going on? You've been blocking my driveway for months. He blinked like I'd just accused him of tax fraud. Have I? Yes, you have. He glanced past me at the Mercedes. Oh, that's a client. Big pitch tonight. I'll have him move. It's not about tonight, I said. It's about every night. His smile tightened just a little. Look, man, we're just trying to build something here. It's temporary. Once we scale, I'll get office space. That doesn't help me now. He shrugged. Actually shrugged. Street parking's public. You can park anywhere. That's my driveway. And I'll move it, he said, voice losing patience. You don't need to make it a whole thing. A whole thing. I stood there for a second, realizing something I hadn't wanted to admit. He didn't see me as a neighbor. He saw me as background. As the guy with the older truck and the faded mailbox who'd eventually just give up. He called over his shoulder. Evan, can you move your car for a sec? And walked back inside before I could say another word. I stood there alone on his porch, listening to muffled laughter and clinking glasses behind the door. That was the moment something shifted in me. Not rage. Not exactly. Clarity. When I walked back into my house, I didn't go to bed. I went to the hallway closet where we keep my grandfather's old file cabinet. Heavy metal thing. Smells faintly like dust and old paper. My grandfather, Harold McKinney, had been a land surveyor for 40 years. Measured half the county by hand before GPS made it easy. He kept everything. Maps, deeds, easement agreements. I hadn't opened that cabinet in years. But that night, I pulled open the bottom drawer and found a folder labeled in his careful handwriting. Ridgeview Lane Original Plat, 1967. And that's when I remembered something he once told me, back when I was a kid sitting at his kitchen table while he sharpened pencils with a pocket knife. This whole street, he'd said, tapping a yellowed map, used to be ours. I sat down on the living room floor, papers spread around me, and started reading. And the more I read, the more I realized Brent Calloway had no idea whose driveway he'd been blocking. I stayed up until almost 3 in the morning that night, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with my grandfather's papers spread out like I was piecing together a crime board. Old plat maps, survey notes written in pencil, copies of deeds with county stamps faded to purple ghosts. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock in the kitchen and my mom's soft snoring down the hall. And there it was. Back in 1967, before Ridgeview Lane was even called Ridgeview, the entire strip of land where our street now runs had belonged to my family. My grandfather had sold parcels off over time when the neighborhood was developed, but he'd retained certain rights. One of them was a 30-foot easement granted to the city so they could build and maintain the road. But it wasn't unconditional. There was a clause, typed clean and precise. The easement would remain valid so long as the property served residential purposes consistent with zoning regulations at the time of agreement. Any commercial use materially altering the character of the roadway would constitute a breach, subject to review and potential revocation by the grantor or heirs. I read that sentence 5 times. Then I sat back against the couch and just stared at the ceiling. Brent's little consulting empire wasn't some occasional Zoom calls from a spare bedroom. He had traffic, daily traffic, client meetings, branded signage, catering deliveries, even a valet service once during some networking event where a kid in a Blazer parked cars up and down our street. If that didn't alter the character of the roadway, I didn't know what did. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I fix boilers and air handlers. So before I let my imagination run wild, I called in sick the next morning and drove down to the county recorder's office. I felt ridiculous walking in with a manila folder like I was about to argue a Supreme Court case. But I requested certified copies of the original easement and subsequent property transfers. The clerk, an older woman with half-moon glasses, raised her eyebrows when she saw the documents. Not many people dig this far back, she said. Family history project, I lied. She stamped everything, handed it back, and that's when I called a property attorney recommended by one of the guys at work. Her name was Dana Whitfield. Straight shooter. Late 40s. No-nonsense voice. I laid everything out on her conference table. She read quietly for a long time. Flipped pages. Took notes. Finally, she looked up at me. Well, she said, this is interesting. Interesting good or interesting bad? She leaned back. The language is unusually specific. Your grandfather anticipated future zoning conflicts. Does that mean? It means, she interrupted, If there's demonstrable commercial activity in violation of residential zoning, you could petition the court to review the easement. My pulse picked up. Review as in revoke? Potentially. But understand something, she said, folding her hands. If you revoke the easement, the entire stretch of road covered by it loses legal access. That affects more than just your neighbor. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I pictured Mrs. Alvarez 2 houses down, the retired couple at the end of the block. I don't want to hurt anyone else. Then you need leverage, not destruction, Dana said. First we establish violation. Then we file notice. Often the threat alone forces compliance. Leverage. That word sat with me. So I started documenting everything. I took photos of Brent's yard sign advertising Callaway Strategic Consulting. Screenshots of his LinkedIn page where he proudly mentioned hosting executive strategy sessions at his home office. I logged vehicle traffic for 2 weeks. Dates, times, license plates when visible. I talked to neighbors casually. Mrs. Alvarez sighed when I brought it up. Those meetings, they block my mailbox sometimes. The retired couple mentioned late evening gatherings. Loud voices. Once, someone parked partly on their lawn. Nobody had wanted to make waves. Brent donated to the local PTA, sponsored the high school robotics team. He was charming in public. But privately, he treated the street like an extension of his company. Dana filed a formal zoning complaint first. That triggered a city inspection. Brent received a notice of potential violation. I watched from my porch the day the inspector showed up. Brent stood in his driveway, hands in pockets, smiling that same polished smile. A week later, nothing changed. If anything, traffic increased, like he was daring someone to stop him. So we escalated. Dana drafted a petition to review and potentially revoke the easement based on material breach. We notified affected property owners. That part weighed on me. I knocked on doors, explained the situation honestly, told them I wasn't trying to strand anyone, just force compliance. Most were surprisingly supportive. He thinks he owns the place, one neighbor muttered. We filed on a Monday. Court review was scheduled quickly because the language in the original agreement was so clear. Brent showed up with a lawyer in a tailored Navy suit. I wore my only blazer, the one I use for weddings and funerals. Brent didn't even look at me at first. During the hearing, Dana presented evidence calmly. Traffic logs, photos, screenshots, zoning code excerpts. Brent's attorney argued that occasional client meetings did not constitute commercial transformation. Dana countered with frequency, signage, and the impact on residential character. Then the judge asked Brent directly, "Mr. Callaway, do you conduct regular business meetings at your residence?" Brent hesitated. "Yes, Your Honor, but..." "And do clients visit daily?" "Yes, but..." The judge nodded slowly. A week later, the ruling came down. The court found sufficient evidence of commercial use inconsistent with the easement's conditions and authorized temporary suspension pending compliance. Temporary. That word didn't sound dramatic. But when the city received the order, they moved fast. Liability concerns. Emergency access issues. If the easement was under suspension, they couldn't legally maintain the roadway without risk. By Wednesday afternoon, orange barricades appeared at both ends of our block. I stood on my porch, heart pounding, watching city workers set them in place. A sheriff's deputy waited near Brent's driveway with paperwork in hand. When Brent pulled up in his Audi and saw the barricades, he slowed to a stop, window sliding down. "What is this?" he called out. The deputy approached. "Sir, access to this roadway has been suspended pending compliance review." Brent's face drained of color. "Suspended? I live here." "Yes, sir." He glanced toward my house. And for the first time since he'd moved in, he wasn't smiling. Traffic backed up behind him. Confused drivers. One of his clients got out of a black Lexus, looking around like he'd taken a wrong turn into a construction zone. Brent walked across the street toward me. "You did this," he said, not yelling, just stunned. "I filed a petition," I replied evenly. "You can't shut down a public road over parking." "It's not about parking." His jaw tightened. "This is harassment." "No," I said. "This is enforcement." For the next few days, residents had to park at the temporary access point 1 block over while the city sorted legal logistics. Emergency services arranged contingency routes. It was messy, inconvenient. But Brent's situation was worse. Without confirmed road access, utility servicing became complicated. Deliveries stopped. Clients canceled meetings. His big Thursday networking event? Dead. By Friday, he'd hired a different attorney. And that's when the calls started coming. The first call came Friday night around 8:30. I was in the kitchen washing dishes, trying to ignore the weird silence outside. No engines revving. No doors slamming. Just crickets and the distant hum of traffic from the main road 1 block over where everyone now had to park. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Mr. McKinney? The voice was smooth, practiced. This is Robert Gaines, representing Mr. Brent Calloway. I dried my hands slowly. Okay. I believe we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. My client would like to discuss an amicable resolution. I almost laughed at that word. Amicable. He's had 6 months to be amicable, I said. A pause. Well, circumstances have evolved. Yeah, that was one way to put it. We met the next afternoon at Dana's office. Brent was already there when I walked in. No blazer this time. Just a wrinkled button down and the faint shadow of stubble he hadn't bothered shaving. He looked tired. Not humbled exactly, but rattled. He didn't make eye contact at first. Dana gestured for us to sit. Robert launched into it. My client is willing to immediately cease all in-person business operations at the residence. He will remove signage and transition to a leased office space within 30 days. Brent finally looked at me. This has gotten out of hand, he said. My wife can't get grocery deliveries. My son's missing school because he has to walk from the main road with his gear. This affects more than me. I held his gaze. You didn't think about that when my mom was carrying groceries 3 blocks because your clients blocked us. He flinched slightly. That wasn't intentional. Neither was this. Silence filled the room for a second. Robert cleared his throat. We're also prepared to offer compensation for any inconvenience caused. There it was. The money card. How much? Dana asked evenly. Brent shot her a look, like he hadn't expected it to be that blunt. A reasonable annual fee for continued easement use, Robert said, structured as a private agreement. Leverage, just like Dana said. I leaned back in my chair, and for a moment, I let myself imagine pushing it further, letting the suspension drag out, forcing a permanent revocation, watching him try to sell a house technically landlocked. But then I pictured Mrs. Alvarez again, the retired couple, my mom, who hated conflict even when she knew we were right. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about boundaries. I want 3 things, I said. Brent's jaw tightened, but he nodded. First, written and recorded acknowledgement that no vehicle associated with you, your family, or your business will ever block my driveway again. Ever. Done, Robert said quickly. Second, proof of signed lease for commercial office space within 30 days. If not, we refile immediately. Brent swallowed. Fine. Third, I continued, an annual easement usage fee paid to my household. Not because I need it, but because rights have value. Robert scribbled numbers on a legal pad, turned it toward Brent. They whispered. Finally, he looked at me. We can agree to that. Dana drafted the agreement that week. Tight language. Clear penalties. It was recorded with the county, so it wasn't just a handshake deal. The city lifted the suspension once documentation was filed. The barricades came down on a Monday morning. I was standing on my porch when Brent pulled into his driveway. He stepped out, hesitated, then walked across the street. For a second I wondered if this was round 2. He stopped a few feet from me. I underestimated you, he said. That wasn't hard to do. A ghost of a smile tugged at his mouth, but it didn't fully form. I built my career on pushing boundaries, he admitted, seeing what I could get away with. I didn't think it mattered here. It does, I said. When you live somewhere, it matters. He nodded slowly. My office lease is signed, he added. Downtown. Starts next week. Good. There was an awkward pause. The kind where 2 men who don't like each other are trying to decide whether this is closure or just a ceasefire. My wife wanted me to apologize, he said finally. That your apology or hers? He exhaled. Both. I studied him for a moment. He didn't look smug anymore. Just tired. Maybe a little embarrassed. Apology accepted, I said. Just don't make me dig into old paperwork again. That got a real smile. A week later, the yard sign disappeared. The steady stream of luxury cars vanished. Even the Mustang revving stopped, which honestly felt like a bonus victory. My mom noticed the quiet first. It feels like it used to, she said one evening as we sat on the porch. And she was right. The street felt like a neighborhood again, not a co-working space. She parks right in our driveway now. No long walks. No struggling with grocery bags. Brent's clients never set tire on our curb again. The annual easement check arrives every January. I put most of it into a small maintenance fund for the house. The rest I use to take my mom somewhere nice for dinner. Now here's the part people argue about when I tell them this story. Some say I went too far, that I risked disrupting the whole neighborhood over pride. Maybe. Others say Brent had it coming, that people like him only learn when it costs them something real. Maybe that too. All I know is this. I tried polite. I tried patient. I tried being the easygoing neighbor who didn't want trouble. And he mistook that for weakness. There's something about property lines that's bigger than land. They're boundaries, agreements, quiet understandings between people living side by side. You cross them long enough, eventually someone's going to redraw them. So I'm curious what you think. Did I overreact? Should I have let it go? Or was this just one of those times where standing your ground means using every tool you legally have? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read more of them than you'd think. And if you've ever dealt with a neighbor who thought the rules didn't apply to them, I'd really like to hear how you handled it. Sometimes the smallest line on a map ends up being the one that matters most.